Please, just let us breathe for a moment.
That's all she said. One sentence, soft voice, and this is what came back.
Your property? Don't make me laugh. What'd you do? Sell crack until you could fake a mortgage?
Get your lying ass off that porch before I drag you off it. Women like you don't build anything. You steal it,
or you
or you spread your legs for it. 30 cops stood behind him, grinning. A neighbor live-streamed it, captioning, "Finally cleaning up the block."
Carol Wren
Another
took
one
them
muttered,
long enough.
"Took them long enough." Nobody objected. Just phones out and smirks on. One black woman, surrounded, humiliated, completely alone. But not one soul on that street had any idea what was coming. By morning, every badge on that lawn would be worthless. Let me take you back to the beginning. Before the sirens, before the 30 squad cars, before any of it. That morning, Whitney Wallace woke up at 5:45. No alarm. 30 years in the United States Army rewires your clock permanently. She made her bed first. Hospital corners, sheets tight enough to bounce a quarter off. Old habit, the kind that never leaves. Her bedroom was simple. Clean white walls. An oak dresser her late husband built by hand. On top of it sat a folded American flag in a triangle case. The flag from his funeral. She touched the glass every morning, just her fingertips. She never skipped that. Whitney walked downstairs. Sunlight poured through kitchen windows onto granite countertops. She brewed coffee, black, no sugar, Army strong, and looked out at her backyard garden. 3 varieties of roses, red, white, and yellow. She had planted every one herself, hands and knees in Georgia clay. Thorns scarred her palms, but she didn't care. Those roses were hers. This house was hers. She had earned every square inch of it. Because Whitney Wallace wasn't just any retiree tending roses in a quiet suburb. She was a retired brigadier general. 1 star. West Point graduate, class of '92. 2 combat tours, Iraq and Afghanistan. A Bronze Star for valor under fire. After retiring, she took a position most people will never know exists. Senior civilian advisor to the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. She worked directly with the Pentagon. She held a top-secret SCI clearance. The documents in her home office had classification headers that would make your eyes water. But on the street, you'd see a 58-year-old black woman in gardening gloves and a sun hat. And for some people in Crestwood, Georgia, that was enough. Crestwood. Pretty suburb 40 minutes south of Atlanta. Ridgewood Estates was its nicest neighborhood. Big lawns, stone mailboxes, 2-car garages. The kind of place that puts "welcome" on the entrance sign, but means it selectively. On paper, Crestwood was progressive. But the police department told a different story. 2 excessive force complaints in 5 years. Both involved black residents. Both quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements. No officer disciplined. No report made public. The man responsible had a name. Captain Craig Dunlap. Dunlap ran the patrol division for 12 years. 49, square jaw, buzz cut so tight it looked painted on. He called his style proactive policing. What that meant was simple. Any neighborhood that diversified got extra patrols, more stops, more questions. He once told a fellow officer, "You let one in, 10 follow. I'm just keeping standards." His boss, Deputy Chief Ray Suttles, never questioned him. Rubber stamp. No oversight. They ran that department like a private club. Whitney had lived in Ridgewood Estates 3 years without a single police interaction. She kept to herself, waved to neighbors. Her closest friend on the street was Denise Albright, a white woman across the road. They shared gardening tips and drank iced tea on weekends. Denise was the kind of neighbor who noticed things. That afternoon, Whitney was expecting a delivery. New patio furniture. A teak dining set ordered 3 weeks prior. The truck came around 2 p.m. 2 men unloaded 6 large boxes onto her driveway. Normal delivery. Signature required. But 3 houses down, someone was watching. A white neighbor saw the boxes. He didn't see any furniture. He saw a black woman receiving a suspicious number of packages. He picked up his phone and dialed Crestwood PD. Suspicious activity. A lot of boxes being unloaded. Doesn't look right. That call hit Dunlap's desk within minutes. And instead of sending 1 patrol car, standard procedure for an unverified anonymous tip, Dunlap smiled, leaned back, and said 4 words. "I've had my eye on that property." He requisitioned a full tactical response. 30 officers, a K-9 unit, all for a furniture delivery. The sun was dropping. Whitney was inside unpacking the first box. She had no idea what was rolling toward her street. It started with a sound. Low at first, like distant thunder rolling across flat land. Then it grew. Engine after engine after engine. Whitney set down the box cutter and walked to her front window. What she saw made her stomach drop. A wall of police cruisers was turning onto her street. Not 2, not 5. She counted them as they came. 10, 15, 20. They kept coming. Red and blue lights bouncing off every white garage door on the block. The evening sun caught the light bars and scattered color across the pavement like a crime scene disco. Then came the K-9 unit, a black SUV with a German Shepherd barking behind the cage. She could hear it from inside her house, that deep, angry bark that sounds like it's tearing through metal. Radios crackled, doors slammed, boots hit asphalt, one after another after another. Officers poured out of their vehicles and fanned across her lawn like an advancing platoon, hands on holsters, eyes locked forward. Whitney's heart hammered against her ribs. But she didn't panic. 30 years of combat training teaches you one thing above everything else. Panic is the enemy. Stay still. Assess. Respond. She opened her front door and stepped onto the porch. The air smelled like exhaust fumes and hot asphalt. The temperature was still hovering around 85 degrees. Sweat was already forming on the back of her neck. She stood straight, shoulders square, hands visible at her sides. Every movement is deliberate. Every breath is controlled. Captain Craig Dunlap walked toward her porch like he owned it. Slow, heavy steps, his thumbs hooked into his duty belt. A toothpick rolled between his teeth. Behind him, Officer Brett Henson followed, younger, quieter, but just as armed. Dunlap stopped at the bottom of her porch steps. He looked up at Whitney. Then he looked at the house, then back at her. His eyes moved like he was appraising livestock. "We received a report of criminal activity at this address," he said. No greeting, no identification, no badge number offered. Just a flat, cold sentence dropped like a brick. Whitney kept her voice level. "I'm the homeowner. What criminal activity are you referring to?" Dunlap tilted his head. A slow, exaggerated tilt, like a dog hearing a sound it doesn't understand. Then he smiled. Not a warm smile. The kind of smile that says, "I already decided who you are." "The homeowner," he repeated. He looked back at Henson. "You hear that, Brett? She says she's the homeowner." Henson said nothing. But Dunlap wasn't done. "Ma'am, I've been working in this area a long time. I know every house on this block. I know who built them, who bought them, and who belongs in them." He paused. Let that last word hang in the air. Belongs. "And I have to be honest with you. Something about this picture doesn't add up." Whitney felt the heat rise in her chest, but she kept it locked down. "Officer, I've lived here for 3 years. My name is on the deed. If you'd like to verify that, you're welcome to contact the county clerk." Dunlap ignored her completely. He turned to Henson. "Run the address," Pull the deed records. And run her name, too. I want everything. Henson reached for his radio, but Dunlap wasn't waiting for paperwork. He was already moving. He stepped up onto the first porch step, then the second. Now he was standing level with Whitney, close enough that she could smell the stale coffee on his breath, close enough that his shadow fell across her face. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, voice dropping low. "You're going to step aside. My officers are going to enter this residence and conduct a security sweep. If everything checks out, we'll be on our way." Whitney didn't move. "Do you have a warrant?" "I don't need a warrant when I have probable cause." "An anonymous phone call about packages is not probable cause, Captain. You know that." Something shifted in Dunlap's expression. The fake politeness evaporated. What replaced it was raw, undisguised contempt. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. He leaned in closer. "Let me make this real simple for you. I've got 30 officers on this lawn. I've got a K9 unit ready to go. And I've got a report that says something illegal is happening inside this house. Now you can cooperate, or I can arrest you for obstruction and we go inside anyway. Your choice." Whitney held his stare. "I am not obstructing anything. I am exercising my constitutional rights. You are standing on my property without a warrant, without verified probable cause, and without my consent. I am asking you, formally, to leave." Dunlap stared at her for a long 5 seconds. Then he stepped back off the porch. For one brief moment, Whitney thought it was over. She thought reason had won. It hadn't. Dunlap turned to the line of officers on the lawn and raised his hand. He pointed 2 fingers toward the left side of the house, then 2 fingers toward the right. Officers moved instantly. 2 went left, toward the backyard gate. 2 went right, toward the garage side entrance. They didn't ask permission. They didn't announce themselves. They just moved. Whitney's voice sharpened. "Those officers do not have permission to go around my house. Call them back." Dunlap didn't even turn around. "Securing the perimeter. Standard procedure." "There is nothing standard about this." He ignored her again. He was done pretending to listen. He raised his radio to his mouth. "Bravo, unit. Bring the dog to the front door. We're going to let him take a sniff." Whitney watched the K9 handler walk the German Shepherd toward her porch. The dog pulled hard against the leash, claws scraping on the concrete walkway. Its bark echoed off every house on the street. The sound was designed to intimidate, and for everyone watching, it worked. Neighbors had come outside now. Denise Albright stood on her front lawn, phone raised, recording every second. Her face was pale. An older white couple 2 doors down stood on their porch with their arms crossed. A man in a golf shirt shook his head slowly, but said nothing. Nobody moved to help. Nobody called out. They just watched. The K9 handler brought the dog to Whitney's front door. The animal sniffed the frame, sniffed the threshold, sniffed the welcome mat. It circled once, twice. Nothing. The dog showed no alert behavior. Its tail wagged loosely. Its ears stayed neutral. But the handler wasn't done. Whitney saw it. A small, subtle movement. The handler shifted his knee and tapped the dog's left flank. A trained cue, invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. The dog immediately sat down and barked twice, a false alert, manufactured on command. Dunlap turned to Whitney with the satisfaction of a man who had just won a rigged game. "Dog alerted," he said. "We're going in." Whitney's voice was steel. "That dog did not alert. Your handler cued him. I watched it happen." Dunlap stepped past her. "Ma'am, step aside or you will be moved." 2 officers flanked Whitney on the porch. One grabbed her left arm. The other placed a hand on her shoulder. They guided her, firmly, not gently, down the steps and onto the walkway. Her feet touched her own lawn and she was held there. Standing on grass, she mowed herself, outside a house she paid for in full, surrounded by men with guns who had no legal right to be there. Officer Henson was told to stay with her. He stood beside her, one hand on his belt, eyes forward. He didn't speak. But if you looked closely, his jaw was tight. His breathing was shallow. Something about this didn't sit right with him. Dunlap walked through Whitney's front door without removing his boots. His officers followed him in. And just like that, it was no longer her home. It was their crime scene, based on a furniture delivery and a phone call from a man who saw boxes and saw color. Inside Whitney's home, it sounded like a demolition crew had been set loose. Cabinet doors slammed open and banged against walls. Drawers were yanked out and dumped onto hardwood floors. Glass shattered somewhere in the kitchen. A coffee mug, maybe a vase. Whitney heard it from the lawn and her whole body tensed. Every crash was a violation. Every thud was a message. This is ours now. She stood on her own grass with Henson beside her, listening to her life being torn apart room by room. The evening air carried every sound through the open windows, a drawer sliding, a shelf collapsing, something heavy hitting tile. Each noise was a small earthquake in her chest. Upstairs, 2 officers entered her bedroom. They pulled open her closet doors and shoved hangers aside. Clothes fell to the floor in heaps, pressed blouses, Sunday dresses, a wool coat she'd worn to her husband's burial. One officer opened the dresser, the oak dresser her late husband had built with his own hands, sanded smooth over 3 weekends, and dumped the drawers upside down. Socks, scarves, and undergarments scattered across the carpet like debris from an explosion. The triangle case holding the folded American flag was knocked sideways. It didn't break, but it was moved, shifted from the exact spot where Whitney placed it every single morning, touched by hands that had no right to be in that room, let alone near that flag. In the living room, couch cushions were ripped off the frame and thrown against the wall. A bookshelf was emptied one shelf at a time. Photo frames crashed face down onto the hardwood. One of them cracked, the glass splitting right across a picture of Whitney in dress uniform, standing in front of the Pentagon with her hand raised in salute. 28 years of service in that photograph. Now face down in broken glass on her own floor. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. Then they reached her home office. The door was closed but not locked. An officer pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was neat, orderly. A mahogany desk sat near the window, positioned to catch the morning light. A secure laptop, powered off, was centered on the desk. And beside it, a stack of folders. Each one stamped across the top in bold red letters. Top secret //SCI//NOFORN. The officer picked one up. He flipped it open casually, like he was browsing a magazine at a dentist's office. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. He didn't understand a single word of what he was reading. But the classification headers were impossible to miss. Red ink, capital letters, warning boxes on every margin. He called out toward the hallway. "Captain, there's some folders in here. They've got government markings all over them." Dunlap walked in. He picked up a folder himself, turned it over in his hands, looked at the stamps, ran his thumb across the classification bar, then he tossed it back onto the desk like it was junk mail. "Government markings," he repeated. He laughed through his nose, a short, ugly sound. "Please. She probably printed these herself to look important. You can fake anything with a color printer in 10 minutes on Google." He tossed the second folder on top of the first. The pages inside fanned out and slid across the desk. Classified intelligence briefings. Real ones. With real code words and real operational data. Now contaminated by the fingerprints of men with no clearance, no authorization, and no understanding of what they were touching. Any intelligence officer in the country would have recognized this as a federal crime in progress. Whitney heard Dunlap's voice carry through the open window. She called out from the lawn, loud and clear. "Those documents are federally classified. Your officers are committing a felony by handling them. Stop immediately." Dunlap appeared at the front door. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, looking down at her like she was evening entertainment. "Classified," he said slowly, tasting the word like it amused him. "You expect me to believe that a woman like you has classified government documents sitting in her little home office? I don't need you to believe it. I need you to stop breaking the law." Dunlap smiled. That same rotten smile from the porch. "Sweetheart, the only law being broken here is whatever hustle you've been running to afford a place like this. And trust me, we're going to find it." He turned to go back inside, but before he did, another officer came down the stairs holding something on a hanger. A United States Army dress uniform, dark blue jacket, gold buttons polished to a mirror shine, and on the shoulder, a single silver star, the star of a brigadier general. The officer held it up in the doorway. "Captain, found this in the master bedroom closet. Military uniform. It's got a star on it." Dunlap stopped walking. He turned around slowly. He looked at the uniform hanging there in the porch light. He looked at Whitney standing on the lawn. Then he looked back at the uniform. And he laughed. A real laugh. Deep. The kind that comes from the belly when someone hears the funniest joke of their entire life. "A general's uniform," he said, loud enough for every officer on the lawn to hear. "In her closet." He shook his head, wiping his eye like he was tearing up from the comedy. "Probably picked it up at a thrift store. Or a costume shop. Halloween was 6 months ago, sweetheart." 3 officers on the porch laughed with him. One of them pulled out his personal phone and snapped a photo of the uniform. For the group chat, probably. Something to laugh about over beers later. Whitney said nothing. Her face didn't change. Not a flinch, not a twitch. But her hands, hanging at her sides, closed slowly into fists, not from rage, not from discipline. The discipline of a woman who had commanded hundreds of soldiers across 2 combat zones and never once raised her voice out of anger. She wasn't going to start now. Not for him. Not for any of them. But Dunlap wasn't finished. He came down the porch steps and walked directly toward her. He stopped close. Too close. Inches from her face. She could see every vein in his neck pulsing. She could smell the stale coffee on his breath and the cheap drugstore aftershave on his collar. "Let me tell you what I think happened here," he said quietly, almost whispering. "I think you got yourself into something dirty. Drugs, fraud, stolen goods. I don't know which one yet, but I will find out. And when I do, I'm going to personally walk you off this property in handcuffs, in front of every neighbor on this street. Because women like you don't earn places like this. You take them, you cheat for them, or you spread your legs for someone who can." Whitney held his gaze, steady, unbroken. "Are you finished?" "Not even close." He turned and pointed at her rose garden, the roses she had planted on her hands and knees in the red Georgia clay. 3 varieties, years of care. "Those'll look real nice when the new owners move in," he said. Then he spat his toothpick onto her walkway and turned back toward the house. At the door, he called over his shoulder. "Henson, take her phone. Bag it as potential evidence." Henson hesitated. His hand hovered near his belt but didn't move. "Captain, she hasn't been charged with anything." "Did I stutter? Take the damn phone. Now." Henson walked over to Whitney. He wouldn't look her in the eye. He reached out his hand. She didn't resist. She placed the phone in his palm herself. He carried it to the hood of the nearest cruiser and set it down. Her only line of communication, gone. But what Dunlap didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Whitney had already made one call. 3 minutes before they took her phone, while Henson's back was turned and Dunlap was busy performing for his audience, she had dialed a number she knew by heart. A Pentagon number, Colonel Terrence Moore's direct line. The call connected in 2 rings. She spoke 6 words. "Terrence, I need you. Trace my location." Then she ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket before a single officer noticed. 6 seconds. That was all a general needed. By now, the sun had fully dropped behind the roofline. Streetlights buzzed on one by one, casting yellow pools across the trampled lawn. Shadows stretched long and dark between the rows of squad cars. The air had cooled 10 degrees, but the tension was hotter than it had been all evening. Thicker, heavier. Like the entire street was holding one collective breath. Inside, Dunlap's officers were still tearing through rooms. Someone upstairs dropped something heavy. A bookend, maybe a jewelry box. And the sound hit the floor like a gunshot. Whitney flinched. Just barely. Just once. Then she was still again. Across the street, Denise Albright had been recording for over 20 minutes straight. Her phone battery sat at 31% and dropping fast. Her hands trembled, but the camera stayed steady. She filmed every face, every badge number she could zoom in on, every word she could pick up. A news van from Channel 4 turned onto the block. Someone, Denise, most likely, had tipped off the local station. A reporter and a cameraman stepped out onto the sidewalk and took in the scene. 30 squad cars, a K9 unit, lights still strobing red and blue, a black woman standing completely alone on her own front lawn, surrounded by armed officers who treated her home like a drug den. The reporter turned to her cameraman. One word. Everything. But the most important thing happening in that moment wasn't on that street. It was happening 40 miles away, inside a secure office at the Pentagon. Colonel Terrence Moore had just set down his personal phone and picked up a red one. His face was stone. His voice was controlled, but his fingers were already dialing. The call he was about to make would end Craig Dunlap's career, his freedom, and every single thing he thought he was entitled to. 35 minutes. That's how long the raid had been going when Dunlap's radio crackled to life. He was standing in Whitney's living room, flipping through a photo album he'd pulled off a shelf. Pictures of Whitney at military ceremonies. Pictures of her shaking hands with men in suits. He barely glanced at them. He was looking for something incriminating, something that would prove him right. He needed to be right. Then the radio spoke. "Captain Dunlap, this is dispatch." The dispatcher's voice sounded different, higher, tighter, like someone had wrapped a wire around her throat. "I have an incoming call patched through from the Pentagon, Department of Defense. They are requesting the commanding officer on scene, immediately." The living room went quiet. Every officer within earshot stopped moving. One froze mid-step on the staircase. Another set down a drawer he was carrying like it had suddenly caught fire. The word Pentagon hung in the air like a flashbang that hadn't gone off yet. Dunlap stared at his radio. His thumb hovered over the transmit button. For 3 full seconds, he didn't press it. 3 seconds of silence felt like 30. Then he keyed the mic. "Patch it through." A voice came through the speaker. Calm. Controlled. Cold as January steel. The voice of a man who had spent his entire career giving orders that were never questioned. "This is Colonel Terrence Moore, United States Army, Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. Identify yourself." Dunlap swallowed. "This is Captain Craig Dunlap, Crestwood Police Department. I'm the commanding officer on—" "I know where you are, Captain, and I know exactly what you're doing." Moore didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word landed like a hammer on glass. "The woman whose home you are currently inside, without a warrant, without probable cause, and without authorization, is Brigadier General Whitney Wallace, United States Army, retired. She currently serves as a senior civilian advisor to the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. She holds a top-secret SCI clearance. She reports directly to officials who brief the Secretary of Defense. Dunlap's face changed. Not all at once. It happened in stages. First, the color left his cheeks. Then his jaw went slack. Then his eyes. Those hard, arrogant eyes that had spent the last 40 minutes looking at Whitney like she was nothing, went wide. Wide and empty. Like a man watching his house burn from the driveway. Moore continued. His voice never wavered. General Wallace outranks your mayor. She outranks your chief of police. She outranks every single person in your chain of command. And right now, your officers are handling classified national security documents without any form of clearance. Do you understand the severity of what I just told you? Dunlap opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has been notified. Agents from the Atlanta field office are en route to your location as we speak. Estimated arrival, 40 minutes. Until they arrive, you will do the following. Moore paused. One beat. You will order every officer out of that house immediately. You will not remove a single document, a single item, a single photograph from that property. You will secure the scene, and you will wait. Dunlap's hand was shaking now. The radio trembled against his palm. He tried to speak. His voice cracked on the first word like a teenage boy's. Colonel, we were responding to a legitimate... Moore cut him off like a blade through paper. You conducted a warrantless search of a federal official's residence. You detained her without cause. You allowed uncleared personnel to access top-secret SCI materials. And based on what General Wallace reported to me by phone, your officers have also destroyed personal property, used a fabricated K-9 alert to justify illegal entry, and made repeated racially motivated statements. Another pause. Longer this time. Save your explanations for the investigators, Captain. You're going to need them. The radio went dead. Dunlap stood in Whitney's living room holding the radio at his side. His face was the color of old paper. His chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths. Around him, officers stood frozen in place. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The house that had been filled with noise and destruction 5 minutes ago was now silent as a church. Outside, the news van camera was rolling. The reporter had picked up fragments of radio chatter from an officer's open channel. She didn't have the full picture yet, but she had enough. Her cameraman zoomed in on the front door just as the first officers began walking out. Slowly, heads down, hands empty. Dunlap emerged last. He stepped onto the porch and looked across the lawn at Whitney. She was exactly where they had left her, standing on her own grass, hands at her sides, back straight, expression unchanged. The same calm she'd carried from the very first moment he'd set foot on her property. She didn't gloat. She didn't shout. She didn't say a single word. She just looked at him. And for the first time in 12 years of wearing that badge, Craig Dunlap looked away first. Whitney Wallace walked up her own porch steps, crossed her own threshold, and stepped back into her own home. She closed the door behind her. Gently. Like nothing had happened, like she had all the time in the world. Because she did. And Craig Dunlap's time had just run out. The FBI arrived in exactly 38 minutes. 2 black Suburbans turned onto Ridgewood Estates with no sirens, no lights, no drama. They didn't need any. The drama was already there. 30 squad cars, a news crew, and a police captain standing on a stranger's lawn looking like he'd just been told his own funeral date. 4 agents stepped out. Dark suits, federal badges on their belts. The lead agent was Special Agent Carolyn Tate. Mid-40s, short brown hair, eyes that had seen every lie ever told and hadn't believed a single one. She walked past every officer without acknowledging them. She entered the house, surveyed the damage, and spent 11 minutes inside. When she came out, she carried a digital camera full of photographs. Every overturned drawer, every broken frame, every classified folder with unauthorized fingerprints. She walked directly to Dunlap. produce your warrant for this search. Dunlap's mouth opened, closed. We had probable cause based on... Produce the warrant, Captain. There is no warrant. The K-9 alerted. So you entered a federal official's residence, an official with an active top-secret SCI clearance, without a signed warrant. She paused. What was your documented probable cause? An anonymous tip. A caller reported suspicious activity. An anonymous, unverified tip about packages. Agent Tate's voice got quieter, which was worse. That wouldn't justify a single officer knocking on the door, let alone what I documented inside. Dunlap said nothing. Your badge and service weapon. Now. You are suspended effective immediately pending federal investigation. Every officer watched. The Channel 4 camera was zoomed in tight from the sidewalk. The red recording light glowed like an unblinking eye. Dunlap unclipped his badge. He pulled his weapon, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and placed everything in Tate's hand. His fingers trembled. His face had aged 10 years in 1 hour. Tate turned to the remaining officers. Everyone who entered that residence provides a full written statement tonight. Anyone who refuses will be detained as a material witness. Silence. Then slow, scared nods from men who had been laughing 45 minutes earlier. Officer Henson stepped forward first. He didn't wait to be asked. I want to cooperate fully. Over 20 minutes, he gave a complete statement. Dunlap's pre-raid comments. The phrase, I've had my eye on that property. The K-9 handler's knee tap. The racial slurs. The thrift store joke. Every detail captured on federal audio equipment. 3 other officers followed. Their statements confirmed a pattern stretching back over a decade. A captain targeting people of color with the full knowledge of his chain of command. Deputy Chief Suttles was reached by phone within the hour. He tried to distance himself immediately. I didn't authorize that level of response. But Tate had already pulled the deployment order. Suttles' electronic signature was on it. Time-stamped, logged, undeniable. Dunlap was escorted to an unmarked federal vehicle. No handcuffs yet. Those would come later. But the door closed behind him with a heavy, final sound. The kind that separates before from after. The vehicle pulled past Whitney's porch. She was standing there, arms folded. Dunlap looked at her through the window. His lips moved behind the glass. General, I was just doing my job. Whitney's voice carried clear across the night air. Your job. You brought 30 officers to a black woman's home because someone saw a furniture truck. You called me a thrift store general. You told me I spread my legs to afford my house. You spat on my walkway and threatened my roses. She paused. That wasn't your job, Captain. That was your character. And now it's your permanent record. The vehicle disappeared around the corner. Behind Whitney, Denise Albright started clapping. Then the older couple 2 doors down. Then 3 more neighbors. Then the whole block. Whitney didn't smile. She nodded once. Then she went inside and closed her door. By sunrise, the story was everywhere. Denise Albright uploaded her footage to social media at 11:46 that night. She didn't add a caption. She didn't need one. 22 minutes of uncut video. 30 squad cars on a quiet suburban street. A black woman standing alone on her lawn. A white police captain laughing at a general's uniform and calling it a thrift store costume. The video hit 1 million views before breakfast. By noon, it had crossed 10 million. By the following evening, every major news network in the country was running it. The clip of Dunlap holding up Whitney's dress uniform and laughing, that 6-second moment, became the image of the story. Screenshots spread across every platform. Memes followed. Then outrage. Real, sustained, volcanic outrage. Whitney's military record surfaced within hours. West Point, class of '92, top 15%. 2 combat deployments, Iraq in 2003, Afghanistan in 2009. A Bronze Star for valor after she led a convoy through an ambush that lasted 90 minutes and brought every single soldier home alive. Promoted to Brigadier General at age 51, one of the highest-ranking black women in Army history at the time of her retirement. The contrast was devastating. A woman who had bled for her country, who had sent troops into battle and brought them back, who had earned a star on her shoulder through 30 years of service, treated like a criminal on her own front lawn because a neighbor saw boxes and saw skin color. Veterans organizations were the first to respond. The veterans of foreign wars issued a statement calling the raid a disgrace to every man and woman who has worn the uniform. The American Legion followed. Then individual service members, thousands of them, posted their own videos, active duty, retired, enlisted, officers, all saying the same thing. She served. She sacrificed. And this is what she came home to. Members of Congress weighed in within 48 hours. 3 senators demanded a federal investigation. 2 representatives called for Dunlap's prosecution on the floor of the House. The Congressional Black Caucus held a press conference and placed Whitney's official military portrait on an easel beside a screenshot of Dunlap laughing on her porch. The image went viral on its own, but the outrage was only the surface. Underneath it, the FBI was digging. The federal investigation expanded rapidly. Agents subpoenaed 12 years of Crestwood PD records, every stop, every search, every arrest, every use of force report filed under Dunlap's command. The numbers told a story that no amount of spin could hide. Black and Latino residents made up 22% of Crestwood's population. They accounted for 71% of all traffic stops, 83% of all vehicle searches, 68% of all use of force incidents. Every single number pointed in the same direction. Every single number had Dunlap's fingerprints on it. Internal complaints had been filed over the years. 9 of them, all from officers of color, all describing the same patterns: racial profiling quotas, pressure to target minority neighborhoods, retaliation against anyone who pushed back. Every complaint had been reviewed by Deputy Chief Suttles. Every single one was marked unfounded and buried. The K-9 handler, Officer Trent Colby, was investigated separately. His dog's alert history was pulled and analyzed by an independent canine behavior expert. The findings were damning. In the past 3 years, Colby's dog had alerted during 46 searches. 44 of those searches, 95%, involved people of color, and of those 44 searches, only 3 produced any actual contraband. The rest were clean. The expert's conclusion was simple and direct. The alerts were not coming from the dog. They were coming from the handler. The anonymous tipster was identified through phone records. His name was Gerald Fisk, 3 houses down from Whitney, retired accountant. When confronted by FBI agents, he admitted what everyone already knew. He called because he saw a black woman receiving large packages and assumed it was suspicious. He had never spoken to Whitney. He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her. He just saw what he wanted to see. Fisk was not charged with a crime, but his name became public, and the court of public opinion delivered its own verdict. The federal trial began 4 months later. United States of America versus Craig Dunlap. The charges were severe: deprivation of civil rights under color of law, Title 18, Section 242, unlawful search and seizure, unauthorized access to classified national defense information, filing false police reports, conspiracy to violate civil rights. Dunlap's defense attorney argued standard policing procedures. He called character witnesses, fellow officers who testified that Dunlap was thorough and dedicated. The prosecution played Denise Albright's video in full, 22 minutes. The jury watched every second. When the footage reached the moment where Dunlap called the general's uniform a costume, one juror closed her eyes and shook her head. Another wrote something down and underlined it twice. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. Every single count. No exceptions, no compromises. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Judge Leonard Shaw addressed Dunlap directly before reading the sentence. He said that what happened on Whitney Wallace's lawn was not an isolated incident. It was the visible peak of a system designed to degrade, humiliate, and control people based on the color of their skin. And that systems like this survive only because men like Dunlap are allowed to operate without consequence. Then he read the number. 10 years. Federal prison. No possibility of parole for the first 8. Dunlap stared straight ahead. His wife sobbed in the gallery. His attorney placed a hand on his shoulder. Dunlap didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stared at the table in front of him like a man watching his entire life collapse into a single point. Deputy Chief Ray Suttles was tried separately, convicted as an accessory. 4 years federal prison. Officer Trent Colby, the K-9 handler, was convicted of civil rights violations. 6 years. 3 additional officers received permanent suspensions and lifetime bans from law enforcement. The city of Crestwood entered a federal consent decree mandating a complete overhaul of its police department. New hiring standards, mandatory bias training, civilian oversight board, body cameras on every officer, no exceptions. Mayor Dale Buckner, facing a recall petition with 14,000 signatures, resigned before the vote could take place. Attorney Gail Preston filed a civil rights lawsuit on Whitney's behalf against the city of Crestwood, the police department, and every officer involved. The city settled for $12 million. Whitney didn't keep a single cent. She donated the entire amount to establish a legal defense fund for victims of police misconduct across the state of Georgia. The fund was operational within 90 days. 6 months later, Whitney Wallace sat in a leather chair facing a United States Senate subcommittee. The hearing room was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Senators leaned forward in their seats. The gallery was standing room only. She wore a simple navy suit. No medals, no stars. Just her West Point class ring, catching the light every time she moved her hand. She didn't need the uniform. The room already knew who she was. She spoke for 14 minutes. No notes, no prepared statement. Just her voice and her memory. She described the evening in detail, the sound of 30 engines, the smell of exhaust on her lawn, the feeling of being grabbed on her own porch and moved aside like furniture. She described Dunlap's face when he laughed at her uniform. She described the sound of her husband's flag case being knocked sideways by a stranger's hand. Then she said something that silenced the entire room. "I am a brigadier general. I have a Pentagon phone number on speed dial. I have a top-secret clearance and a Bronze Star. And it still took all of that. Every rank, every connection, every year of service, just to be treated like a human being in my own home." She paused, looked directly into the camera. What happens to the woman who doesn't have any of that? What happens to the mother who works 2 jobs and comes home to 30 officers on her lawn? Who does she call? Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. The silence said everything. Whitney's testimony was broadcast live. 11 million viewers watched in real time. Clips were shared across every platform within minutes. Her words, "Who does she call?" became a rallying cry for police reform advocates across the country. 3 months after the hearing, Whitney formally launched the Wallace Justice Initiative, a nonprofit legal organization providing free representation to victims of racial profiling and police misconduct. She funded it with the $12 million settlement. Within its first year, the initiative took on 46 cases across Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina. It won 39 of them. Whitney continued her work at the Pentagon. She didn't slow down. She didn't retreat. If anything, she moved faster. She told a reporter in her only interview, "I didn't survive 2 combat zones to be quiet now." Back in Ridgewood Estates, life returned to something resembling normal. But it wasn't the same normal. It was better. The neighbors who had watched in silence that night organized a civilian oversight committee for the new Crestwood Police Department. Denise Albright was elected its first chairwoman. The committee met monthly in the community center and reviewed every complaint filed against an officer. No more sealed files. No more rubber stamps. No more silence. The old Crestwood PD was gone. The new department hired its first black police chief, a 20-year veteran from Atlanta named Captain Elaine Driscoll. On her first day, she stood in front of the assembled officers and said, "This department will protect every resident of this city equally. If that's a problem for anyone in this room, there's the door." Nobody left. But the message was received. On a quiet Saturday morning, almost a year after the raid, Whitney was in her front garden, on her knees in the Georgia clay, planting a fourth variety of rose, deep purple, almost black in certain light, a variety called Midnight Justice. Denise walked across the street with 2 glasses of iced tea. She handed one to Whitney and sat down on the porch step. "New roses?" "New roses." They sat together in the morning sun. The street was quiet. No sirens, no radios, no flashing lights. Just bird song and the smell of fresh soil, and 2 women sharing iced tea on a porch that belonged exactly where it was. Whitney touched the petals of the new rose with her fingertip, gently, the same way she touched the glass of her husband's flag case every morning, with care, with memory, with the knowledge that some things are worth protecting no matter what it costs.